Hi there, it's Jacqueline Bear. So recently I was having a conversation with a friend, an artist friend, of the difference between the Holbein Acrylic Gouache and Golden SoFlat Matte Acrylics. So we both gave each other some of our paints. These are her set, so that we could kind of play around with it and see what the difference is, because she likes to use these and I like to use these, so we're going to do a little showdown. So let's talk a little bit about each one, and then I'll do swatching, I'll say the similarities, the differences, all of that jazz. But I'm going to start with the Holbein Acrylic Gouache. These I have been using for 5 years, so I'm going to do my absolute best to being unbiased with all of this, but I will lean towards these, knowing that I just know them. But again, I'm going to do my best to be unbiased. So these come in a tube, and they are 20 ml, which is 0.68 fluid ounces, compared to Golden SoFlats, which come in a jar, and they are 2 fluid ounces. So you do get more in this jar than you get in this tube, and I'll talk about price later. The Holbein Acrylic Gouache. These artist paints typically go much farther than you might expect, even with being like in a tinier tube. It has a high pigment load, and you can extend it a bit when you add a little bit of water, which is the way I like to use it. And with the Golden SoFlat matte acrylics, these have self-leveling properties in them, so when we brush it onto the paper, it should like level itself out, and I want to see if this does the same thing comparative to this jar. And both of them will have a velvety matte finish, which is what I love about this acrylic gouache. So to find out that these matte acrylics are the same, I'm very excited about that. So they both have that finish, which means they're not going to be glaring or shiny or anything. I really like my pieces to have a nice matte finish. When it comes to similarities, I've already discussed how they have high quality pigments in each of them. They both lay down smooth, they both have that velvety matte finish to it, and both of these will have a more opaque coverage, some better than others. You can even see right here how the cerulean blue hue is really opaque compared to the quinacridone red. That has a little bit of transparency to it, but for the most part it will be more opaque compared to like watercolors. And another reason why I love using the Holbein Acrylas are because when I go to photograph them or film them, there isn't a glare to it. So not only is it beautiful as a velvety matte finish, it also helps me when I'm taking photographs of it. When I looked online, I looked up the SoFlats matte acrylics and noticed that they have 60 colors to choose from, and the Holbein Acrylic Gouache has 109 colors to choose from. Now, the Holbein will have more what is called a convenience color, which is pre-mixed paints, and it kind of takes out the guesswork of mixing colors. Today I'm going to use these primary colors to help mix colors to show you today, but I do like how both will have convenience colors, just the Holbein's going to have more just because they have a lot more. But also, if you are an artist that loves cadmium colors, Golden has at least 5 of them, as where Holbein has none. So perhaps Golden chose that because, they want a more opaque pigment than more modern pigments, opacity that they were going for, but I don't really use cadmium colors, so it doesn't matter to me, but if that matters to you, the SoFlats will have that for you. The reason I don't like using cadmium colors is because they're more toxic to the environment. So if you're out plein air painting, one, you shouldn't really be throwing your paint water out, but if for some reason you did, you wouldn't want to throw out cadmium colors that could ruin the environment around you. So I just prefer to use non-toxic alternatives when it comes to that. But side note, don't be throwing your paint water out just in nature. Pack it in, pack it out. So I want to dive into swatching and kind of painting with them before I talk about the differences or more similarities I find, and then later on in the video I'll talk about the pricing difference and just, my final thoughts. But I can say my first thought literally just by seeing these, is I always prefer a tube over a jar. So we're going to see how that plays into it. Again, personal preference, but let's dive in. So as I will open these golden ones, I did read online that you should mix it because sometimes they can separate the pigments. Wow, that's really vibrant yellow. Ooh, okay. So first thing I'm noticing besides these gorgeous colors is a very strong odor. So if you have a sensitive nose, you may not like that. We'll see how I like that. Another reason why I wasn't a big fan of jars, I don't want to contaminate the colors as I'm dipping between them. I do like to wash my paintbrush after each color, but we'll see how that goes, which already this is dirty, so we're going to try to clean that. I'm going to put some of these colors over here on my tearaway, like just disposable pad palette. That's just what I'm going to use today because it's going to be the easiest to clean up for me. So I'm going to move some of these over here. But first I need to stir it. This is really messy. Too messy for me. Okay, let me do the red one real quick. Okay, I put all three of the goldens over here on my palette. It was a lot messier than I wanted it to be, and I closed it because it was a little stinky for my liking. But I do want to go ahead, before it starts drying on this palette, let's wash this off. And as you know, I like being a really clean artist, so I'm not the biggest fan of it being messier, but I'm sure as I work with it, I can find a better way of not being so messy. And I've divided my paper, which is just the Fabriano mixed media paper. It's just what I had on hand so that I could test it. So let's go in here, just put some of this color down. It's a pretty nice consistency. It's definitely, compared to the Holbein, a little more liquidy, I'd say. Like it flows more, which is really nice. And I have like a little bit of water with it, because that's what I'm used to using it as. Because see, that was a little bit watery, so it got a little more translucent. So if you can see, I know it's a little shiny because it's like a little wet, but the left side I had a little bit more water with it, and the right side's hardly any water. Maybe just a little damp brush. I kind of want to make a mix down here of each one. So we're going to start with yellow. Let's do that at the top. Guess I could have done this while I was swatching. So while I'm letting this dry, I'm going to go ahead and use my 3 Holbein colors. Now these won't be like primary colors, but they're as close as I could. So don't be deterred by just the slightly different color than if I were to get like an exact match. But these are as close as I could get. So I'm going to do more of a watery base one here. Less water. So it gets on a little thicker. So over here is a little bit watery of the colors, more opaque, and then I'm going to make the color wheel down here, which, sorry, it's not the best circle, but you'll get the gist. We're going to tint all the colors with some white. I have permanent white here. I also like to use zinc white, but this is pretty much out, so we're just going to use the permanent white. I really love primary colors in just, you know, the array of colors you can make out of it. So if you were to get either one of these, getting more primary colors and like a white would be perfect. Maybe some browns if you want to. But you can just get so many colors. So I'm just going to use the white to tint the 3 colors, not every single color. So now you can kind of see what it looks like when you add white to it to make it more pastel. And these are drying pretty fast. Like some of my colors accidentally got a little bit more water in it than I intended, but most of that is dry. That looks pretty cool. And depending on the color, like this Golden SoFlats are supposed to be self-leveling, and that one still kind of has some brush strokes. But then same over here, where like this blue is so flat, same with the yellow, but like the red has a little bit more brush strokes. So it just kind of depends, I think, on color, because you can kind of see the brush strokes here, but not in the yellow. So it's very interesting. And then same down here when you can see the primary colors. Again, like look at this blue, it's so flat. I love it. So just by swatching these, some of the differences I've noticed are the Golden SoFlat Matte acrylics are very liquidy compared to the Holbein Acrylic Gouache. And this I do like to add water to. I've just been used to doing that. But if I were to use this, I wouldn't need to add water, which is really cool. I do like that about the difference of this, and that they both just come out velvety matte when they're done drying. I really enjoy that. Now obviously when you're looking at these colors, these are going to be more vibrant because these are more true to a primary set compared to just what I had in my stash of the Holbeins. So, you know, you just got to look at what I have here. But I do like the colors that are muted in the Holbein. That's just my preference. But I know that they have some more muted colors. So again, these were just my friends that I borrowed, but in the future I could always get the more muted colors that I tend to lean towards. So another thing about the Holbein Acrylic Gouache that I do where I add the water to it, it will extend it when you're adding water, so it can behave a little bit more like watercolors a little bit, but you do lose some of the opacity that way. But with these SoFlats, these are good if you want a really rich, matte, and opaque area of color that also flows nicely. So it just comes down to preference, and I do like that about this. I also mentioned that when I open these, they have a really strong odor, as where these don't, except I have noticed over time that my sap green, after a couple of months or something, when it's starting to get down to the last bit, I notice it has a distinct weird smell. So I don't know if it's moldy or like what it is or what maybe the color is that's in this that might do that. But that is something I have noticed over time, that the sap green does smell. But these had a pretty strong smell just opening it, but that could also be because it is a jar. Like when you open this, all of that can come out compared to this. You know what I mean? So once I closed the jar and I had it on my palette, the smell was not bad at all. But if you were to keep it open, it would smell. So that's just a little side note. So let's talk about price. So with paints, you will notice that there are different series. So this is a series 2 compared to a series 9 and a series 6. So when it comes to pricing, the lower ones will be cheaper than the higher ones. So you do want to keep that in mind. These say series A, which is not a series. Usually series are numbers. So, okay, that's a pro for SoFlat because I understand series 1 through 9, but series A, I would just assume is the lower one, and then the other series, nope, that's a series A too, maybe are the more expensive ones. I will check into that and I'll put it on the screen somewhere when I find the answer. But back to this. Let's just pretend that this is a series 2. We're just going to pretend that. When it comes to these, the jar is 2 fluid ounces compared to the tube, which is 0.6 fluid ounces. So at the time of recording this, when I saw what the retail price is, these are $12.49 for the 2 ounce. These are $9.75 for a 0.68 ounce. So if you do the math of $12.49 divided by 2 ounces, this would be $6.25 an ounce. But then if you take $9.75 divided by 0.68 ounces, you would get $14.34 per ounce. So clearly these are double, if not more than double, the price per ounce compared to the Golden SoFlats. So when it comes to price, you definitely get a better deal with the Goldens. But do remember that there are always sales and they will come and go throughout the year. So even with on sale when I'm doing this right now, this is still cheaper per ounce, which makes sense to me that it will always be cheaper per ounce because these are more expensive. But you could, if you really wanted the tubes, which I prefer using tubes, get these when they're on sale, and it does save you money. So just keep that in mind. Another thing I like about the Golden is that it comes in 3 sizes, a 2, 4, and 16 ounce, compared to the Holbein that just has their 0.6 ounce and 1.35 ounce, so a 20 mil or 40 mil. So you can get bigger ones of the Holbein, but you do get a lot more options of sizes with the SoFlats. So that also comes down to how you paint. I paint very small, so I'm okay getting this paint on sale, so I get a good deal on it, and I have less paint. But if you like painting larger, bigger, this would be a really good deal, especially if you can get the next bigger sizes. So again, I think it comes down to your style of painting, how large or small you're painting, and what your budget is. Next, I want to talk about putting the paint on a palette. So because, yeah, it's dry already. So because the SoFlats are so liquidy, it spread out. Let me move this up, sorry. Because the SoFlats are so liquidy, when I poured it out, it started spreading more, and as it spread, it would dry so much faster compared to like if it stays, more bubbled up. So if you're using the flat palette like I did today, you will need to work quicker. And I also live in Southwest Colorado where it is extremely dry here, so I have to take that into consideration compared to if I had used a palette with like wells in it so that this could stay more contained. So I did want to mention that because you can even see how this one is still bubbled up. I had already moved these ones out, but even the red there is more in a pool compared to spreading out too much. Now, like this quinacridone red stayed really well, but like the yellow just immediately started like dripping down where it's just sitting here. So you want to keep that in mind. But you could also use a wet palette where you could tear this off and put it onto like one of those stay wet palettes where there's going to be a layer of a sponge that is wet, and then this goes on top of it. People use it for acrylic paints and oil paints and stuff, so you could do that. I have made some homemade ones before that I could always do a video on if you'd like to see that. But today I just wanted to use it straight out of the tube in the jar to see what would happen. But I think I could keep the longevity of keeping it wet and moist for me to paint longer if I had used a wet palette. And as far as like the characteristics of the paint, the SoFlat, because it was thinner and more fluid, it would, like I said, evaporate and dry more quickly, and it needs to be stirred more from the jar to prevent the paint from separating, which isn't a concern when it comes to the Holbein one. So if you're cool with always stirring it and working in like larger quantities or bigger, canvas or paper or something, that may not be an issue for you. But for how I like to paint, I do like to just, more cleanly put the paint on the palette and go. So I don't like to have to stir it as much to make sure that those properties are working correctly. So now that these have dried, I kind of want to show it to you. I'll just kind of do a nice close-up. So as you can see, there's no sheen to them. None of the colors have that. They all dry very matte and velvety. That's what I love about it. That's why I like these. As adding this to my collection, I think that they're going to be a nice complement to work with my Holbein. I was looking online and I think there's some colors I think I might want to get from Golden that would complement how I like to paint with my Holbeins. But my personal preference, which may not be what a lot of people would think when it comes to price point, how much you can get, why would you like one versus the other when clearly the Golden is cheaper per ounce? But I really like the Holbein Acrylic Gouache for a couple of reasons. One, it comes in a tube. I thought maybe I could take this and buy one of those empty tubes to put it in, but I read that you need to be able to stir this, so I don't think it would work out as well in a tube. But please, if you have done that or you have ideas, let me know in the comments, because I really would like to use these because they are cheaper per ounce, and art supplies gets expensive. You all know that. But for that reason, these can be $12+ for the jar, as where these can be like $9+ for the tube. So if I'm just getting a few colors, I could go with this because I can make this tube last a really long time. Some of these I've had for years and I still haven't used all of them. And I'm not a consistent painter with my gouache, so it also comes down to your practice. I do lots of creative things, so I dip into each one as the seasons come and go. But I really like that these are in a tube, and I think that that is my main reason why I will stick with my Holbeins. But please tell me, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the SoFlats or do you prefer the acrylic gouache by Holbein? I would love to know what you think. So now I think what I want to do is flip this page or get another piece of paper or something and do just a little mini scene painting with both of them, so I can kind of compare how I work with each of the colors, not just swatching and looking at the similarities and the differences. So I'm going to prep that. So here's the final painting I did. I finished it late last night. The left side is the Holbein and the right side is the Golden paints. And so obviously the colors are different because I didn't have exact matches for, what was in my stash and what I borrowed. But it does give you a sense that they both are very velvety matte finish to the touch. And once again, to just like recap, I did enjoy using the Golden SoFlats because they were a bit more liquid and they like could go on a little smoother because you didn't need near as much water to be able to like, especially that first layer, to be able to like just get a nice wash down. So if you're painting larger, I think that the SoFlats are really, really helpful. But just personal preference, I don't care for them being in jars. I found it messier for what I like to do. I prefer having tubes to just be able to squeeze out. So again, I know that these price point are better, but I like tubes. So I'm wondering, I think I had said this before, if I could put this in an empty tube. Or let me know if there's a way that you like to put these on your palette. Perhaps I'm just doing it a weird way. It's just my first thought of how I was pouring them and putting them on the palette. So let me know if you have any tips about that. But I did enjoy painting with both of them, and they both come out with the same matte finish and the velvetiness that I love about the gouache and the matte acrylic. Yeah, I just really enjoyed painting with both of them when it comes to the final product. I will also say that these are stinky. Like when I had them open, and so I had to close them, but even with them on my palette, they started giving me a headache. So that is another reason why I don't care for them being in a jar. So we'll see in the future if I choose to actually buy more of these. Again, these were just my friends. So we'll see. So I hope you enjoyed this video of comparison of both of these. I think that it was a really fun little video to do. Let me know other maybe things you want me to compare and contrast and give you my opinion on. I'd love to know, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Cheers.